Will, it's amazing to have you back. People probably don't know this, but we have this content conversation podcast. I should look back at the timestamps before I record this call, but you were the first person to come on with Rand in person in our office to kind of like set the stage for podcasting. And we've done it ever since, keep grinding. But I should have had you on sooner since then, but you've always been very helpful to me, great, helpful to our entire industry. So amazing to have you back on.
Dude, no, man, it's super fun. Where were you at? Were you on 7th and Broadway at that time?
I think
What street
6th
were
and
you
Broadway.
on? 6th and
Yeah.
Broadway. All right.
San Diego.
Yeah. I remember those days. Right, because you're in Austin now, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So fully remote. Times have changed. No longer an office to shoot in, but we're making it happen. We're virtual here. But yeah, I mean, things are changing so fast. You're leading the charge for SEER and like doing so much great content on AI and like innovating and like showing thought leadership online. I thought it'd be great to kind of talk through where you're thinking and how those things are today, among other things, given how the world is changing. I mean, you've always done a great job about keeping SEER ahead of the curve, generally, and I've looked up to that. And naturally, I wouldn't, like you'd probably say, some people might say, not have other agency people on, but there's like so much to go around, and always look up to you guys and root for your success. So,
Yeah, I think that's small thinking, right? I remember one day me and Critchlow had a conversation because for a while, like us and Distilled were just like boom, 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 right? In the sense of like we were competing with the same clients, and trying to get the same kind of client. And one day me and Will were just like, yeah, as long as Razorfish is still getting clients, we're not beating each other up. Right. It's like one of those things like there are much bigger fish to fry. And as long as they're taking clients that we wish we had, like we're not going to fight like with each other because there's a much bigger dragon to go slay, So yeah, man, I've never really believed in that like keep your agencies away and all that kind of stuff. It's like, nah.
Agreed. Yeah. It's always, I mean, I literally just had it with folks at 97th Floor, actually, who I respect also. And we lost a deal to them, and I was like, but I found out they won it in certain situations. I'm like, oh, you're in good hands. I'm happy for you. Generally, things work out that way. So, like, that would be the same. I don't know how often we come up across each other at all, but
Dude,
if we ever have, yeah.
I pulled our BD team off of following up with a project because I found out that one of our like good friends closed it. And my BD team is like super sharp at being like, oh, once we lose something that we were the one of two agencies picked, this is how we stay in touch with them. This is what we do. And once I found out that it was like one of my friend's agencies, we met for coffee and he was like, oh my God, I closed this deal. Yada, yada, yada. It's huge. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. And then he says it. I'm like, oh man, that's the one, man. I'm like, well, we lost to you. That means they're in good hands. And I was like, also though, my BD team had a whole process ready to go for like how we were going to stay in touch and how we were going to like try to get that business. And I was like, don't do it. I'm like, I just would rather, like, I don't want that on my conscience. Like, let's go find somebody else, but I don't want to be taking shit from my friends who need to grow their businesses.
Yeah, agreed. Well, on the SEO side of the house, like things have been changing as already kind of teed up. And one of the questions I like to ask, and I know you always have a strong take on this kind of stuff, is like, starting with your RCS talk at MozCon, but like, are there certain things today that you feel from a search standpoint you believe in that other people would disagree with you on, or a good amount of people would, or you just feel like maybe people are zigging and you're zagging, or you suggest zagging? Is there anything that kind of comes top of mind there?
Disagree? I don't know. I don't know if people would disagree. The one thing that's been the biggest surprise to me is how important organic social has become. So disagree or not, it's like the data that I got across clients is telling me that people are getting answers in new places, right? And it's like, when are you going to become an answers company and stop being a fucking search company? Because search was a proxy for how to get an answer, and it was so good at that for so long. But then we all got WhatsApp. Then we all got private Slack groups. Then we all got, LinkedIn groups. And there's like all these new places where people are going to get answers. And we've continued to just kind of like stay in our little space. And it's like, well, we're doing the keyword research. We're really good at tracking where people are going, yada, yada, yada. Why don't we just expand that mindset a bit? But the problem is is when you think in terms of algorithms and how to adjust an algorithm, you have never studied how to help people solve a problem. So when people are talking to other people in a chat group, you come in with some automation type crap on how can I get in there and automate something or how can I scale something? And you're like, no, this is actually a place where humans are talking to other humans they respect. And once you lose that respect, then like you're out, right? So you have to be really careful of your reputation.
Yeah. So are you actively advising like people be proactive in those communities? When you say organic social, you're not necessarily saying, just to restate it to you, like go post on LinkedIn. You're saying be active in these kind of forum, new world forum communities
I would
potentially.
say be be where your customer is. This is basics. If your customers are on LinkedIn and they're in private groups, maybe you should join some of them. I don't know. Like if your customers are on Slack, then maybe you should spend some time in these Slack groups. I don't know. So to me, it's like basics. It's like go where your customer is. If your customer is starting to get Ross, if you needed to find an email marketing firm, there's no fucking way you would type in email marketing firm into Google, right?
Yeah, I maybe would try, but then I would be dissatisfied with what I see from the I actually have done that, believe it or not, recently, and was kind of mixed on what I saw. I did not
Right.
believe it, so maybe that's not the best for
And
yeah.
think about the work too. You know, it's that now I got to click on all this shit and everybody sounds the same. Everybody's got their awards and how great they are. And it's, you know what? I'm in some groups. Why don't I just put something out to those groups and get actual recommendations from people whose reputations are on the line if this person sucks, right? Like it's interesting that when Google, well, now Google's having a little bit of that problem, but if Google ranks a bad site, we kind of don't blame Google for it, right? We're like, oh, this company found a way to get to the top. It's like, or maybe Google's made it really easy for bad companies to rank well just by writing the same shit that everybody else is writing.
Yeah. So that I mean, I completely agree with that recommendation. Just from the agency owner lens, do you kind of like processize that down to? Is it more like a recommendation your teammates are giving their clients, or are you actively doing it for your clients?
Not yet. I'm doing it for myself because
Makes
I'm going to
sense.
dog food it so I can figure out exactly how it works. And then I think I'm going to need to start a business to do that or acquire a business that does that well already. But it's interesting. Like this is one of the great things about an SEO mind is we do think differently about stuff. And you watch some people do some old school shit that are like, we do organic social. And you're like, you do it in a really like old school way. I just never needed to really go over there. But the thing, Ross, is the realest thing is my budget for marketing um headcount got cut by 92% um uh December of last year. And it was just me. So I was the guy like doing all the LinkedIn updates, all the Twitter updates, sending out the newsletter. Like I had nobody. I went from 4 people to zero, right? And I 10x'd our LinkedIn traffic with only spending maybe 10% of my time on that. And that was the first indicator that's like, huh, so wait, what have we been doing? Right? Like, and it's like, oh, like, so once my eyes opened to that, and then I started tracking lead flow and things like that, I'm like, we're driving tons of leads off of content from organic social. We're driving tons of reputation off of organic social. Like, why won't I just do more of that? And once I saw it for myself and how we were able to create things, and I needed to do a lot of stuff at scale because I was just me, right? I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I got something here. So now it's like an area for me that I want to build on in 2020 into 2025.
I mean, I completely agree. It's kind of funny where our minds are literally in the exact same spot. So we like have done traditional SEO content and now literally working on processes to operationalize adding kind of more pure organic social motion content like customer stories, case studies, more thought leadership for clients by talking to them, talking to their, I think just talking to their customers for customer stories is just going to be so much more helpful to what you said of like our brains over here in the search world. And it's going to make that so much better. And then all that can be distributed on social and contributed to that. And that should hopefully lift all the boats.
You, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, there's like, it's interesting though. Like there's like Gary Vee said this thing once and it really hit me. And I think that's good for maybe grittier companies like ours, given that there's some major change going on, is Gary Vee was on this interview once and he was like, who the fuck would you trust to run your social your social projects? Me and my company, or some CEO who's the head of some WPP who doesn't even have a Snapchat? Like, and Gary kind of broke it down. He's like, okay, so if you post on Snapchat like this, you wait this long, you should start to see this movement. And it's like, because he's actually doing it, right? He's like in it. And he's like, are you going to get somebody who's being told by somebody who's given a report by somebody who gave a report to somebody? Like, they're not living that life. And I think that we've lived, you and I especially have lived organic social for years, writing content people want for years. We're like, we lived this. So now in the last year, I got so good at it that I'm like, wait a second, I'm an SME. This is the thing I hate about content marketing is I think I've been saying this and it makes a lot of people shudder, but I'm like, an SME will smoke a content marketer. And the reason why I know that is because I had a bunch of content marketers running our marketing and I crushed them. You got to think, bro, 92%
Yeah.
less percent on budget for headcount. Most people would say if your marketing headcount, if your team went from 4 to 0, and all you had was 10% of Will's time, there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with what their production was or beat them. And it's like, no, it's because I'm an SME. Like I'm not, I'm like, I'm close to the shit. I'm on it all day. I'm super deep. My sleeves are rolled up. So therefore, like I don't write bullshit posts, right? I have real opinions. So the bend that I took, the bend that I want to take is how do we get people that are like journalists? I want journalists. Fuck this bullshit, content marketers. I want journalists because what you want is a journalist who knows how to interview somebody and pull something out of them. SMEs have
Oh, that's a good
tons
call.
of
Yeah.
opinions. SMEs have tons of opinions, right? The problem is we go to them like, hey, I did some keyword research. Can you write up a blog post? You're like, no, I don't have time for that, right? But if we start interviewing them and pulling stuff out of them, and then be like, just record these questions when you're out walking your dog. I did this for a client. Jesus Christ, dude. 2012? I sent him a recorder because this is before digital shit. I sent him a recorder and I said, when you're driving home, I asked him, how long is your commute? Because we weren't getting any content out of him, but he was a genius. And I'm like, how long's your commute? And he's like, 30 minutes. I'm like, can you once a week talk into this thing about what you believe and then FedEx it back to me? And he would. And then we would take it, listen to it, and turn it into his content because it came from a real authentic place. Right. So that's where I'm trying to go is like, how do I find people in your company that already have these opinions, but they don't want to sit around and write blog posts and then not make them have to do that, quickly extract out of them with real interviewers what their real passions and beliefs are to have real strong opinions, not some like 5 ways to get at this. Like that's not thought leadership, bro. Like you got to have real opinions. Like here's where I think things are right. Here's where I think things are wrong. Like that kind of shit, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not it will never have the leverage of just like going out and doing things without that connection, but it's still so much more higher leverage than just asking that person to do it end to end. Like if we can record on, I mean, I've been doing some of that myself of like recording voice memos. Yeah, and it should be feasible. 30 minutes.
Dude, it is, bro. And
Yeah,
like with
yeah.
ChatGPT and shit, it's like so much easier to just to like process it all, right? And then what you do is you start like being like, well, if I record you talking, my content's going to naturally be in your fucking language. So guess how much faster I'm going to get shit approved? Because it's naturally in your language because you recorded it, right? Versus me writing paragraphs and then trying to stuff it back in and not have it sound too keywordy. It's like mostly you. And then if you do your keyword research to get to your interviewer, then your interviewer now is using keywords to lead the person to use the words naturally instead of you trying to shove them back in somewhere and
Yeah.
you're not getting approved by content teams.
And you can even do like a second qualitative check, like, oh, if you're this person that I interviewed, do you see anything wrong with my article? And hopefully that cuts down on like all the feedback.
100%. But actually, they give you so much stuff, man. Like the little times where I'm testing this with people, they give you so much stuff. You're like, I don't need to worry about hallucinations, right? And then there's the small things. Like in my prompts, I'm always like, use exact quotes, right? So every time it ever summarizes anything off of one of my voice recordings, I'm always like, use the exact quotes. Reason being is I might have recorded that 2 weeks ago. If you just summarize my shit and I'm like, where'd you get that idea from? If it's in my exact words as a quote below it, I'm like, okay, now I remember what I said. Now let me go fix that. Whereas they'll summarize stuff and you're like, is that a hallucination? Did they not really get what I really meant by that? So I found that that's like a little way to make sure that I
Oh, nice.
instantly reference a paragraph that doesn't sound like what I thought. I can instantly reference exactly what I said at that moment.
Nice. So, I mean, transitioning, I think this is a great like direction for everybody for sure. But and hopefully, I'm sure you have at least applications here that are not just like Chat GPT. But what you're an innovator, you're good at using new tools. Like, is there anything underrated or maybe you don't hear people talking about that you're using today? Um, and how do you use it?
Oh, oh. No, I mean, like, dude, I'm basic on my stack. I got Cursor, Colab. I'm used like just like if you want Google to do something in the Google stack, just be like, do it as an app script, done, right? Um Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini is it's got some really cool shit. Like a while ago, I don't know if you saw it, but I did a video around like having like Gemini watching my screen and telling me where to click to get an answer out of Google Analytics. And like it did a really good job. And it's like you can put your cursor somewhere and in real time, I'm like, is this where I'm supposed to click? And it's like, yes, you're in the right place. Go ahead and click that. And I'm just talking and voicing it. So like back in the day, I would have sent in a request to the team, like, hey, I'm looking for a report to do yada yada yada. Now I just turn on real time streaming on Gemini 2.0, and I'm like, it's looking at my screen while I'm doing it. So then you're like, yeah, that's pretty great. I can just talk to you in my natural language and be like, am I in the right place? Or this doesn't look right. Do you see the error message? What does that error message mean? So like that one was pretty cool. But then all morning I've been playing around with this new operator or whatever from OpenAI. And you're like, oh, that's crap. Because why would I sit there and be putting my hand on the mouse, mousing over stuff when I can open up a second window and just let that thing run for an hour or two and do a bunch of research for me. And then I can peek over every once in a while and be like, oh, you're stuck. Let me just tell you where to go and then go back to my job. Right. So like that was cool 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago when I did it. I was like, oh my God, this thing's like my coach in like Google Analytics, like right over my shoulder. And now I'm like, oh, well, I could just tell the thing to log into GA, get me the data and send me an email. That's better.
Nice. So, I mean, Cursor, I had not heard a few of these tools. So, I mean,
Oh,
maybe a lot of people have, but yeah, could you touch on, well, I guess,
it's a coding platform. Like I use Cursor, I use Replit a good bit, just because like sometimes I want to build web apps and I don't. So I start with Colab because Colab is like, give me some code, let me just like put it on my Google platform, let me see if I can get the output. But then every time, like the server's not up and you can't give it to people, and people are like, I got to copy all this scripting and stuff. It's not ideal, right? I'm not going to give that to a client. What's great though is I can say, turn this Colab script that's doing exactly what I want it to do into a functional web app that I can put somewhere on the internet at a URL and then have somebody go do the thing, right? So that has been super cool. I started with Replit. I'm starting to use Cursor. Um, I've installed LLMs locally on my phone. Like I'm just trying to figure some of this stuff out, but I would say those are the two areas that I go because they let me turn whatever Claude builds or whatever ChatGPT builds into a functional web app that I can tell a client to go to a URL and check out.
so correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember your description of yourself from the past, you would say, I feel like you said you were not a technical person. Is that fair to say? Or am
Not
I
at all.
misunderstood? And
Not at all.
this
I
is
still don't know HTML.
Okay. Nice. So now you feel like fully enabled to build like helpful apps from scratch where things are using these tools today.
Bro, so we do paid. We have a client. We accidentally overspent their account by 80 G's, right? Maybe like this is what the world needs to sound like. We overspent by like 80 G's. And our policy is we just refund the number. Like I don't play that fucking game of, well, how much of it converted and blah blah. It's like, no, we messed up. Let us feel the pain. The more pain we feel, the more we're going to correct it, right?
Yeah.
So we pay that check back, and you have to think 80 G's at a 20% margin. You're like, all right, that's a $400,000 project. So what we just gave back to that client is the equivalent of us closing a $400,000 project, which there's not a lot of those out there for us. Like, right, that's a big project. So that's painful. And the team's going through and trying to figure out where the system failed and shit. In 40 minutes, I went into Google and I'm like, I'm sick of this. Like, I'm sick of paying these things. Build me something as an app script that basically emails the client every week, has them validate what their budget is and approve it. And then once they approve it, go into my GA, or my ads, and every day I want you to pull out how much we spent and tell me what the delta is between this and that, so I don't go for a week and spend all their money. It was built in the prototype that was 80% done was built in 40 minutes on app scripts, right? So it's just
Nice.
like, yeah, okay, 40 minutes, 80% of the way there. I handed it over to my PPC team lead. She spent a week on it and then had it like humming at ways that I wasn't even thinking. And she had never, ever, ever used ChatGPT to code a thing
Wow.
ever. And then
Nice.
she was like, "Yeah, give me a week." And she's like, "You did," because she could watch what I did. She's like, "You just typed in what you were thinking." I'm like, yeah, that's it. And then I just said, do it as an app script because I wanted to do it really quick inside of Google Docs and Google Sheets and Forms. And it did the whole thing, bro. Whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's just super fun. And I don't like I said, I don't even know HTML. So,
Yeah. Where
that's
it's
a
at
hot
is
take.
incredible.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's a hot take. A lot of people have been like, if you don't know HTML, then you're not a true SEO. And I'm like,
Yeah. I mean, not,
I got
it
three
was
hundred
never
fifty million
true.
dollars. I got
Yeah.
$350 million in sales that says I know a thing or two about SEO. I don't know about you, bro.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like one of those things where you're like, for real. I think that we have we've had this bifurcation in our industry of like, if you don't know this, you know what I'm watching right now? I'm seeing a lot of people in our industry talking shit on other people and subtweeting motherfuckers, and the shit's getting old. What you're finding is that people are starting to atrophy in their skill set. So then they just want to shit on other people instead of innovating. And it's getting kind of old. Like, it's getting really old. I'm
Yeah.
seeing
I
some of
hear
that. And
you.
I'm like,
Like,
guys, like our whole industry's always been like, people got their clicks in their groups, but it's like, which are just your friends, right? It's fine. But like, there's always been a spirit of collaboration. And I think it's continuing. But what's happening is the world is leaving some people by because this AI stuff, or people are catching up to code. And back in the day when you were like the code guy, or when you were like oh, he knows how to do these crazy things in Google Sheets and XPath. Well, now I'm like, give that to me in a Google Sheet and XPath. Your
yeah.
ego was so attached to being that guy or that girl that now you're just angry shitting on people.
Yeah, seeing that a lot. I mean, as time of
Sad.
this recording, people doing that to kind of like the HubSpot situation out there,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, it's
by the
sad.
time this
It's
published,
sad.
who knows where it'll be. But yeah, I see that, and it's something. Yeah, you've always done a great job at. Yeah, maybe I just like indirectly felt inspired by you on that, but I'm similar of like I try to just try to avoid negative talk. It happens occasionally,
Of
but
course. But
yeah,
you know what? Like, because you got to get tagged and see some of that. I didn't really realize how bad that was until I got real tight with Rand. And then you would just watch people you're like, because I know this man. Like, I know him. Like, he's such a good human. And you're like, man, like, we saw the earliest of early just trolling people, just being
I mean,
dog ass to the guy. And you probably get a little bit of it once in a while, or
yeah,
we'll get a little bit
occasionally.
of it once in a while. And you're like, we should encourage people to put their thoughts out into the world like we did when this thing first started. And yeah, you're going to be wrong sometimes, but it's not an opportunity to shit on people. It's an opportunity to bring them up and be like, yo, I think that's how SEO got good, is we would be like, I disagree with you. Well, let me show you what, let me show you my data. Let me show you what I'm working on. It wasn't like but we were trying to like show each other what we believed in a way to be like, who's really right here about this topic so that we can both learn. Now I think it's become like, oh, Ross has got all these followers, or Will's got all these followers. He's like a douche now. And you're like, all right.
Yeah, you could do it constructively. There's no doubt about it.
Totally. Totally.
And
Anyway,
somehow it just
let's get off of the
do it.
haters.
But yeah, I mean, on maybe. I mean, I'm trying to create the connective tissue here, but one thing I thought of as you're talking about, my identity, my thought process of who Will is and who SEER was. You did a lot of link building for time, to my knowledge.
Mhm.
And I'm curious what that looks. Feel like I haven't checked in with you, like what that looks like, if anything. Now, like how do you think about that? Zero.
We do very little. And remember, like, I don't run teams. So if I had to guess, I would say it's probably like there are certain clients for whom we have determined that link building is important. So therefore, there's probably like a really small subset. But I think, one of the ways that it's become less important, if I'm being honest, is as the brands that we worked with were more established and did more like, for lack of a better word, like real branding, real marketing. We got to ride the coattails of that in our strategy, right? So for us, it was more like, how do I infuse in a little bit of what you're doing in your scripts for ads or whatever, versus like, I need to go out and try to create this trust from a very low point we always have had clients that were funded well enough to be doing so many other things in the market. Not always, but then
Right.
as our client base grew, then we had to look at like what was needed to help them to win. And it wasn't like as much of the, you need these kinds of links for this thing. And it was a lot more of like, we need to figure out how to manage your corporate infrastructure to get anything done. Right. Because you already have certain things that if we can find a way to point this page or this subdomain to this section, game over. But we can't, that could be months of work trying to get somebody to do that. We once spent 2 years trying to get a 301 redirect with a bank, real talk,
Wow.
after they bought another bank. So they bought the old bank, right? It was when whoever bought, I think it was when Wachovia got bought or bought First Union or whatever. So like they literally are like, okay, we now own this company. We've acquired them.
Yeah.
2 years later, we're still like, we were like, yo, how do we get the redirect like to be a 301? We took 3 flights down to Charlotte to go see that client to sit with their team and help them to understand like this isn't going to break any privacy stuff. Like we trust. So like, that was more important work to do than
And
to
you
build
got it
things for
done.
that client for that instance. Oh hell yeah, yeah, we got it done, but it took us two
Nice.
years. So
Nice. Yeah,
hard, but we got
and it makes sense. Agree. When we're doing it, it's kind of in that organic social brand building mind now. Very, very rarely high volume outreach anymore. It's just kind of
I
not.
wonder, and I'm wondering, like, what does that look like in an LLM world? Like, that's going to be a whole interesting thing too. Like, when they were simpler and they were using training data, the coolest thing is this is something that I built in Colab. I would go out to the Common Crawl, and I would just be like, and literally, dude, I know no Python, like I don't know anything, right? And I'd be like, but I know what an API is, and I know what a data set is. So I'm like, go to the Common Crawl and download whatever they crawled. And back in the early days of LLMs, like they were using so much more of the Common Crawl that you felt like it gave you a good proxy for like how often your name was mentioned in the Common Crawl. But now, man, they got their own data sets. We have no idea what they're training on, so
Hmm.
the Common Crawl has become such a small part, if nothing. But for a while, I had like a collab script built where I would just be like, how many times is this client, how many tokens were used on this client's domain? How many times has their brand been mentioned across all these sites? You could do that, right? But now it's like, it's really hard to figure out, like, because then you could say like, oh, I need to get you out there more, which might be more brand and link stuff. Whereas now, like,
Oh,
that's just
yeah.
so hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it too. Like, yeah, it's like just difficult now. More people are doing organic social. Like, there are not a mid-tier blog world out there, so it's
Ooh.
kind of like
The link graph has been heavily disrupted. I haven't thought about that way, but
yeah,
the link graph has been heavily disrupted. So anything built on the link graph as a proxy for value in domains or where traffic is going.
yeah, little spot. I mean, it's really up. We actually did the analysis. I mean, our kind of mid-market started getting worse, and that's where we kind of basically turned it like black and white. We're only going digital PR, up market, brand building stuff. And it was already in the sense of that wasn't really that impactful from a real marketing standpoint. It was, but obviously that's just accelerating in a lot of ways, which is interesting. Is there anything else in the SEO world besides link building you've like changed your mind on recently or stands out?
No, if anything, what I've been thinking is like, are we starting to catch up to the things that I believed? Like the RCS presentation was 13 years ago. So it's like, it's been 13 years of me being like, how about we try to do some marketing to like people? Like, how about we read some books on psychology, like, and how people choose to buy shit, right? Like, how many of us in this room have read these kind of books? And I just remember like no hands going up, me being like, all right, I'm gonna give you guys all these books. Like, just come up, tell me what you're trying to learn. I'm gonna give you these books. And I feel like, so at least for my company, this is less advice for everybody, but for my company, I feel that we're well positioned. Anytime branding and understanding marketing and understanding humans and understanding why people make decisions to buy, anytime that gets rewarded algorithmically, we're well positioned for that. Because it's like I've been beating that into people for freaking 12 years. Like, yo, guys, we're going to cut back on this and do a little bit more of that. We're going to cut back on this. So if you were to say, hey, Will, like, what does that look like? I'm like, oh, we have a whole program by which we have a whole process to watch people Google things and record them and then have us understand. Like, that's like part of a service offering, right? But like, we were doing that
Wow. Good.
10 years ago where we're like, hey, how are we going to do marketing for you if when we used to try to bulletproof content by doing low-level mock-ups of it, and then having people go through them and tell us what they thought about it, right? And one time, this was the biggest takeaway. This happened 10 years ago. I presented at MozCon like 10 years ago. We had a guy on a call once for a large like home builder, and but it's like he's a construction dude, and he was like, if I had have found this content, it would have saved me 3 trips to Home Depot last week. Not a fucking SEO on the planet is going to ever do the keyword research. The keyword research for how to build a deck never says, and I don't want to go to Home Depot multiple times. But what happened is when we heard it, we went, oh my God, that could be part of a campaign. Because but you also got to have somebody who knows what to do when they heard that seed. Somebody's like, well, why would I put don't want to make 5 trips to Home Depot in my title tag? You're like, no, 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 no. Everybody's felt that pain of driving back and forth to Home Depot multiple times because you didn't measure right, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. Like that's the pain point. But for most people, it doesn't surface because you never interview people when they're trying to solve a problem using the internet to do it, right? And then you can do that, but then you also need somebody with the acumen that's sitting there like, oh, there's a nugget there, versus like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to cut that out because that has nothing to do with my keyword research or my content optimization role. You're like, no, that's the people side. Like, you need to understand, like, he just nailed something. Like, let's level this thing up, you know?
Yeah, you made me think of something I like thought of this week actually that I'm like now suddenly super passionate about. It's just the idea that content marketers, we do a lot of content, should do customer stories to fully empathize with the customer to hear exactly what, like they would say that like that Home Depot or whoever solved this problem for me. And it's a business thing that adds value directly to the customer in the process of building that customer story. So you're like doing 2 productive things at once. That's going to make everything else better. It just sounds exactly what you're describing. That unfortunately we weren't doing previously, but now I'm like, oh, we have to get this motion down because it's going to be valuable, but it's also going to make the other stuff probably even more valuable.
You know, one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about, man, and like I thought of this yesterday, and I'm like, man, I don't know what this means, but the if LLMs are word predictors for the most part for now, and I know it's like, oh, they're more than that. I know. So don't blow me up yet. But when you go off script from what it's expecting, because you've heard something from a customer in a call or something that you then incorporate, do you lose your ability to be as visible because it has an expectation of the words that are likely to come after the main phrase, right? And if
Right.
you don't have those because you're using a nomenclature or something that's very different than what it's expecting, like, are the vectors like close enough to be able to be like, you're still talking about the same thing, or does it hurt you to not have some average like content that it would expect to have? So I just been kind of like playing around with like, does it hurt you to be too creative? Because then you're using words and phrases that it doesn't expect, which then means you don't get as rewarded, but you did hear these things from customers, which means like, you know what I'm saying? So what do you think
Yeah.
about that, man? I was really struggling with that yesterday.
I mean, I don't know this is exactly the train of thought, but as I was going down this customer story kind of research rabbit hole, I got some good feedback in a community forum, Exit 5, where customers are. And one person gave the advice, or maybe it wasn't on customer stories, but related, like to get better outputs. Oh, actually, I gave the advice of I had the idea of like upload all your SQLs to ChatGPT and have it give you content ideas based on what those like lead form submits say. This should be valuable, hypothetically. And what the guy said was that essentially that can, because it kind of keeps moving, it can, I think, do what you're saying, do the hallucination kind of motion. While if you chopped it up and gave it incremental pieces of that, it's probably way more likely to be valuable because that's how they function. Is according to, I'm not technical as we
Me neither, bro.
but it made sense intuitively to me that basically if you splice up requests, you're more likely to get helpful things, which maybe is not what you're saying, but that's where my mind went. Is that where, or yeah,
No, no,
clarify
dude.
there, yeah.
Dude, I don't even know what I'm thinking. Like, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things that kind of hit me the other day, and I'm like, oh, would I not be as rewarded if I start calling something too different than what it's expecting because it hasn't been trained to think those things are associated? So that's just, I, dude,
Yeah.
I have no answers for that one. Like, it's like one of those things. I'm just like, ah, shit. Like, yeah. But you know what I'll tell you? Speaking of forums and stuff, You know what's been like really like the easiest fucking thing, bro? That like I'm like, man, like just go up in the right side of your browser and click print, save as PDF on every Reddit that ranks in the top like 5 for every freaking keyword of yours. Like it's one of those things, just like save as PDF, throw it in. How would you update this content based on what actual humans are saying to each other? It's like the simplest thing, right? And we act like we got to have all this infrastructure to do it and APIs and all this and rate limiting. You're like, no, you can click print, save as PDF, take your existing content and say, what questions are people asking in here? What things are people saying that aren't well represented? And then for me, that's when I want to go have my interviewer grab an SME and be like, all right, you do this work. You know, you sit on these like construction sites doing yada, yada, yada. Like, what do you think about this? Oh, let me tell you what I think about yada, 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 yada. Great. Here's your $10 for doing my interview for a couple minutes. Thank you. But now it also is going to sound and feel so much more authentic so I can get it into Reddit so it feels like it's coming from a real person instead of, content marketer trying to know a little bit about it and looking at some ChatGPT shit.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, yeah, you've talked about your evolution, kind of the customer understanding, which you've done since day one, like
Not day one. It took me about
day two, maybe.
maybe like it was 2012. So I founded the company in 2002. So my first 10 years were, more normal basic things, like trying to be a little bit ahead of the game. But it was 2000, like 10, 11 that I started being like, man, like there's more to this. This keyword research thing has so many other prickly points that can create value across an organization, but we keep getting like relegated to this like kiddie table because we're using it to optimize keywords when we're like, no, I understand your customer in real time better than you do because I'm looking at monthly search volumes and what they're changing their minds on day to day. Like, wouldn't you want that insight and intel across you're
Yeah,
building
makes sense.
billboards that you can't change, but once every 3 months. Like, shouldn't we use this way your customer in their own language is starting to change what they think? And people be like, yeah, maybe. And you're like, yeah, and it's more fun to be able to sit at the table with your same data set and use it to help multiple marketers?
Right. I mean, and now we need to sit at that table or gonna waste away essentially is sort of
Yeah,
some
for
of the
real.
takeaway from this. But I mean, on that note, like where's your head out about what the future looks like of search specifically? Are you thinking like do you have a stance on where that's going and therefore you're kind of doing these certain things? Would be curious to hear that.
Are you separating search from people searching ChatGPT and whatnot to get answers? Or are you bundling it all together?
Uh, choose your own adventure, I
Okay.
would say.
I think it's very industry dependent because I have enough clients to see that like you see different trajectories for different industries. Um, but uh this morning when I did the work that I did in Operator or whatever the frick it's called, I'm forgetting the name of it. I literally recorded a video to the team like, "You see this shit? What percentage of your job is moving data? What percentage of your job is logging in somewhere?" So a client sends a request. The client wants the answer the minute they sent the request. They don't want the answer after you wake up and brush your teeth and walk your dog. They wanted the answer when they sent the email, they were in the mode to want the answer. But we've learned to get used to the delay. And then you finally get to work and you get the email and you go, okay. And then you go click, log in, click, drop down, select client, click, filter, 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 and you look. And now I'm going, man, like, did you just see what I saw? Like, this thing was launched 16 hours ago, 17 hours ago. It's now going into my HubSpot and basically texting me on my phone the results of a question that I asked it. And I had to do a lot of nudging and helping. But you're like, in 18 months, you think I'm going to still do all that nudging and helping? Maybe, right? So for me, it is like I have never felt more responsible for getting the team ready for what I think is going to come. And what I think is going to come is probably like a 30% reduction in people that have titles like ours, right? So if that's the case, but the industry's so big that I just have to make sure that we're not in the bottom fucking 30%, right? Because it's not like we're in an industry of 1,000 people and the bottom 30% is 300. And you're like, well, shit, if I'm 500, that's some of my people. I mean, no, we're in an industry of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
That means we just got to be in the last 70. But um, I see automation. I see clients being like, wait a second. Like, this is why you're seeing me be so intent on this. Like, Why did I shut my whole day down and work on this thing? Because I don't want my client to be like, you know what? I saw this thing the other day and I started playing around with it. And it looks like it logs into GA and yada, yada, yada. If my client says that to me today, I'm like, yeah, I did it already. Let me tell you where it failed, what it sucks at. Da, 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 da.
Yeah,
You're not going
yeah.
to catch me and my team surprised because then they start being like, do you really know what you're doing with this AI shit? Like, if my customers are really moving over there, do you still got me doing SEO and keywords and canonicals because that's what you know and that's what you're stuck on? And you know what? Because what we're hearing from clients, they don't want to get caught with their freaking pants down, man. That's the thing. They're like, I do not want to get caught getting asked a tough question. And then I ask you or your team, and they're like, dude, it was launched like 4 months ago. Like, you haven't played with that at all? So for me, I'm like, it is like so personal to me to get my team in a position to where they've got the certifications, they've all built the custom GPTs, they've got the trainings, and then SEER becomes like a powerhouse for like, oh, you're going to get a SEER person in the same way that back in the day when we were doing the PPC and SEO integration, it's
Yeah,
like if you wanted to hire an SEO who was really fluent in how to use paid data to do SEO better, you fucking had to come through us for the most part because I beat it into people that like our
that's what you
customers
do.
see
Yeah.
both. They see both. So how do we have one and not the other? That makes no sense. How have we as an industry been like, I'm not going to look at all the stuff around my ads as if that doesn't matter. Like you can put like a billboard on the side of a country highway is going to get different eyeballs than one in a city. You have to understand the context around which your ads and your visibility is being seen. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for me, man, like I'm like, nope, I'm going to try my damn best to make sure that when people think, hey, when people are going from search to LLM, who are the 3 or 4 companies that are obviously sleeves rolled up Gary V style, where the CEO is in that shit every fucking day and isn't running around in client sales meetings and shit because we got the scale to have a team where I'm like, I'm not coming into your sales meeting. I don't come to sales meetings anymore. Like, because that is putting a band-aid on a cut when there's a chance that our whole arm is going to get blown off. I got to make sure that our arm doesn't get freaking blown off. And I got a bunch of people that are really strong that can manage the rest of the business. Thank God they've chosen to continue to spend time with me over all these years because now I got the trust in them to run their thing so I can go super deep on this stuff. So that's kind of where my head's at. I think it's going to be, dude, it's going to be kind of ugly. And I'm even like starting to think of things like, we went through the time you own an agency. 2020 was nice until we couldn't hold on to any of our people because you're like, holy shit, bro. Like everybody's coming after our people. And I think so many folks are used to that time frame and like, them optimizing for their work-life balance and shit. And I'm like, that's cool and all, but like, guys, like you might have to put an extra 5 hours a weekend to stay on top of this stuff because you got your regular job because most people are still Googling shit. But like this idea that, oh, company, can you give me 10 hours less so then I can go study this for 10 hours? It's like that, these two things can't both happen, right? We got to kind of stay on top of this stuff so we all can take care of each other and grow.
Yeah.
So that's been my big, dude, I am, I, I am deeply concerned. But I also see upside for us because I feel like we've got our finger on this stuff and the pulse the
Positioned.
right way. And I think we'll be okay.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I'm generally with you. I say to people, I'll say generally 20%, but I'm not doing a mathematician analysis on it. And
Me neither.
with you, yeah, it's still going to be a pretty big pie, but yeah, some people are going to get washed out, unfortunately.
Well, here's the other thing too, right, Ross? So I keep thinking like what will happen in the next 6 months is nobody's expecting me to have an automated, not no one. The people that are expecting you, like, why don't you have Vertex hooked up uh, to your BigQuery instance? Because I went to IO and I saw that was possible. Why don't you just have it hooked up so that I can just go in and it's like there's answers for that today. Yes, it's coming 6 months down the road. We have all the data engineers working on it, yada, 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 right? I don't think anybody's going to peg you to the wall that you're not there today, especially given where customers are. We have to wait for customers to move. This is, again, why we need to be more customer centric and more holistic in our analytics.
Yeah.
Right. But as those customers move, clients want to feel confident that you understand how to move in this new place. And I think that we've got time. What I was saying to one of my leaders yesterday is I think in the next 6 months, there's going to be people like you and me that are completely understanding of what's possible with this stuff. And if we were working in-house somewhere as clients, we would be on people's asses in about 6 months, maybe 10, to be like, I really love you guys, but why am I not seeing you do this? right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then we're 5% of the industry. So what'll happen is I think the next 6 months ish, 12 months, 5% of the industry is going to be looking for people that do X. But then you start questioning yourself as in year two, what do you think that goes from 5% to what? 20? And then you have to think of your total addressable market as a company, as companies start to be like, oh no, I'm no longer accepting waiting for you to wake up and brush your teeth and walk your dog for me to get the answer that I had 6 hours ago.
Yeah,
I'm not
makes
accepting
sense.
that anymore because I've seen the world that exists. Why can't I just do this? I think 2 or 3 years from now, that could be 50% of the market. So you have to be like, we got time, but I also think that we have to act as if we don't have a lot of time, or otherwise we lose our sense of urgency, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It keeps the fire under. I completely agree. My mind went to like it's moving fast, but also slow. And that creates
You
like
talk to some of these folks, they slow, man. Like I'm like, I know what I'm working on. I know, like, like you probably have things that you're working on where you're like, and then you talk to somebody about it and you're like, oh, 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 so you're still working on prompts to write content. Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right. I was doing that the minute the freaking 3.5 launched. Like, we're okay. Like, we're a little bit ahead. Like, we're all right here, you know? But I prefer to act as if like we're behind every day because then it just keeps me more hungry, more
yeah, makes
motivated.
sense. I mean, we see. I think we see exactly, and I've heard in conversations like there'll be like 1 out of 100 clients where the one person in house is just like you full time basically on everything AI, and if you're not practicing that, they'll just be like laughing in your face essentially. Um, but that I think, yeah, I think the balance that you're walking, which is nice, is I think some of that natural mindset tends to skew away from like thinking about humans and how they behave and those things. Like walking that balance of doing both at the same
Dude,
time fast is difficult. Yeah,
that's the thing we're gonna have left too. So I'm really big on the human side,
yeah,
really big on it, right? And it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, do I actually think that someday, Ross, people are gonna pick our companies based on a fucking agent? Like, do you really think somebody's gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna outsource the entire process of picking an agency. No. So then it's gonna be like, but we all kind of do the same thing at some point. Oh, we use this, we write this content, we get you these links, we study the LLM. So it's like, well, everybody sounds the same. I'm still stuck picking someone. How do I do that? Oh, I want to connect with you at a human level. Oh, I care that you went to my same university. Oh, I care that you volunteer at things that we care about. Like, those things still affect decisions, but we act as if they don't, but they do. And as the technology improves and starts to wipe out like some of the basic parts of the job and the stuff that we all do that's the same, which is a large part. This is another thing, Ross. I was saying to Will Critchlow the other day. He and I are going back and forth to see if we agree or disagree. But like, SEOs are so well positioned for the future. Like, I go back and forth on this. Sometimes I think they are, and then sometimes I'm like, oh no, we're not. But one of the things that we're used to is the fact that the rules for how to rank on Google have been so established for so long and everybody freaking knows it,
right.
right?
Hmm.
So you're like, well, because there is limited real estate to be in position one, position two, whatever it is, if you're tracking the LLMs or whatever, it doesn't matter that 100,000 people going after your keyword all know to put the freaking word in the title tag and point links to the page. It's the fact that we've always been good at saying, yes, 99% of what we all do is the same. So we're all trying to figure out what's that 1 or 2% that sets us apart and we can go to market with. If you're in like email, there's no rankings in email. You can just get really good using AI at email. And then once somebody gets your prompts on how you send out a great sales email, everybody in the world is sending out the same exact
Yeah,
freaking sales email, right? Because there's no ranking there, right? So it's like the fact that there's a ranking and an order, and like not every restaurant gets listed when you type in best Philadelphia restaurants. So, okay, so there's a ranking and there's an order there, which means you and I can have the exact same information. But if I'm testing something and learning something, and you and I are doing 30 out of 30 things the exact same way, but I found 31 and 32 that you haven't learned yet, then like that's how I'm hoping to get one when you get three. Like, we're so used to that it's
yeah,
like, yeah, when the LLM is like, you should put the keywords in the title and you should do this. And somebody's like, well, that's SEO. I'm like, that's exactly what it was when people would say, my cousin does SEO. Why would I hire you, Ross? And you're like, you're about to find out why you should have hired me. I smoked your cousin.
yeah. Yeah, it's competitive. Basically, yeah, one of our company
Yeah.
values is strive to be better for that exact reason. Like you literally, it's not a static moment. And never more than now, as you
Never
might
more
imagine.
than now.
Yeah.
Never more than now.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Well, I appreciate it, Will. This is great as always. Yeah, we should not make it like 8 years next time.
Dude, I was gonna say the same thing. Like there are certain people for whom no matter what's going on, you make the time for, and you're one of those, right? So if you're ever
Same.
like, yo, Will, like, what are you thinking about this? Or like, I'm just kind of working. Cause you know what, dude? It's new again. The game has been reset. It's just like when I got into SEO in 99. Like you literally had to be like, yo, I'm thinking this. We just did it in forums, right? But you were just like, yo, I'm thinking this thing. I could be completely wrong, but you had to put it out there to validate it, right? So I feel like we're back to that where we need to get with our friends and be like, yo, all right, I'm testing this thing. Like, I'm gonna keep an eye on it. Can you keep an eye on it? And we're going to see if this thing works. Because if you and I know it, there's a bunch of other people who don't. I don't care that you know what I know, right? There's a bunch
Yeah,
of people that
fast and
don't.
slow.
You know what I'm
We'll be the
saying?
fast
So
ones. But
that's
I
the
agree.
idea.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all the shit that's not in the LLM, which is also a mind fuck, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, if you're constantly testing, what you're saying, if we're constantly trying to improve every day and we're constantly testing, then whenever somebody goes into an LLM and somebody sees someone at a conference and that conference, this person drops this amazing idea and it gets indexed by the LLM in 6 months and everybody now does it. We've been doing a bunch of stuff over those last 6 months that we've learned some stuff since then, right?
Right.
And that's not in the LLM yet. So it's going to be a constant state of reinvention, but it'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Anxiety in there for sure, but fun. I like the positive take, but I'm with you. Yeah, it's a good time. Obviously, if you're positioned the right way, but never a better time than now. So, thank you, Will.
Yeah,
People should find you on LinkedIn, of course. Follow your stuff, X, wherever, basically, whatever.
These days, it's Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and X are the places where I'm hanging.
All right, thank you, Will.
All right, man.
See you next time.
Great to see you, brother.